Welcome to part 2 of file system formatting, and we're going to jump right back in where we ended in part 1. And if you recall, in part 1, we did a little visual of the disk when you format the disk so that you could kind of get a concept of what's happening and help you understand how to troubleshoot and manage these things. And now let's dive in and take a little closer look at the 3 file systems that are available in the Windows OS that you may see on the exam. And I'm probably going to throw a 4th one in here if we have time at the end. So those are FAT, FAT32, and NTFS. Now let's start with FAT. FAT stands for File Allocation Table. This is also known as FAT16. So anytime you see FAT16, they're talking about just basic FAT. And anytime you see FAT, of course, they're talking about FAT16. Now this is the oldest and simplest of the Microsoft file system options. This goes all the way back to the DOS days. And as a result, any Windows operating system can read FAT. Now watch for those situations on the exam where you need the most widely acceptable file system. You're going to have all kinds of different operating systems reading this data. FAT may be the way to go. Now it's going to be the least secure, so keep that in mind as well. I'll talk about that in a few minutes here. Now FAT had a lot of cool things about it, but since it's the oldest and since it came from a time when we weren't doing anything with computers like today, FAT was not designed for the size disks and the type things we're doing with our disks now. It created 512 byte sectors. It limited the disk size to 32 megabytes. That looks ridiculously small now, but keep in mind we were using floppy drives back then that stored less than a megabyte total. And I remember when the high density floppies came out and they stored 1.2 megabytes, and we thought that was some really cool stuff. So again, the main thing you want to remember about FAT is it is the most generally widely acceptable usable formatting systems. All Windows operating systems, including DOS, the disk operating system that started it all, can read the FAT file formatting system. Now FAT32 was introduced with Windows 95. This supports disk sizes up to 2 terabytes. So we got a significant jump in what we can do here. And one of the really neat things about FAT32 was it created much smaller, more efficient sectors, and it gave us access to a lot larger disks. FAT32, though, starts to have some issues with older operating systems. Any Windows operating system earlier than Windows 95 cannot read FAT32. So you'll have to watch for that. If you're trying to coexist with older systems like that, you can't use FAT32. Then NTFS came along. Now, this is the formatting system of choice for Windows operating systems. This was originally released way back in the late 1990s with Microsoft's Windows NT, new technology. And Windows NT was Microsoft's first foray out into the server workstation, server client type environment. And so NTFS was used to provide all the bells and whistles that we see now. Although NTFS is that old, it has continuously been improved over the years, and NTFS does some cool things for us. It provides data redundancy, security, local security on the disk compression, file encryption. We can set quotas on our disk based on the users and give every user a certain amount of space and then limit them to that or warn them about it. We can change our cluster sizes if we would like. NTFS supports up to 16 terabyte sized partitions on a dynamic disk. And NTFS is without a doubt the best choice for large disks. So the bottom line is, on the exam, you'll use FAT when everybody and even older operating systems need to access it. FAT32 is somewhere between NTFS and FAT. NTFS is going to be the choice when you want the absolute in security, compression, encryption, and all that sort of thing. However, you start to have problems with other machines being able to read NTFS. That's the file system formatting types that you need to be familiar with, but I'm going to throw one more at you while I've got just a couple of seconds. FAT64, you'll also hear this called exFAT. This was developed by Microsoft for the newer, larger USB thumb drives. Just keep in mind, if you see FAT64 or exFAT, you're talking about a file system formatting that was designed just for USB thumb drives. It does not offer the security and other features of NTFS, but you could see it mentioned on the exam, and you will see it out there in the real world. Just want to let you know what was going on with that. So that's the file system formatting information you need to be familiar with as you prepare for this A+ exam.